Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey here for our round 18 preview show. We are now live all over social media, so please do get involved with our show. Let us trip straight in tonight. Winnie, how are you, my friend?
I'm going pretty well, thanks, Matt. I can't complain off a sweep, or can I? Well, on the recap, I did complain. So I went 3-0 and won the mixed matchup as well. But I felt like I should have actually found more than 3 winners last week. There were a couple staring me in the face. I neglected to tip, and one kind of was tough. The market was in flux as we were live on the show, and part of me was saying just tip it out, but it's hard if I can't do my full diligence and to secure the best line of price. That was, of course, New Zealand. That's how it can go. That's the challenge of a live show. But the advantage of a live show is everything we say, is completely up to date.
Yeah, I can completely understand that as well, man, because one thing I've been doing with the Clarkey's Collect since we brought it in is, you see all these games and all these options and you think, I really like that, but I really like this. And it is hard to kind of differentiate what sort of bet you like versus love. And even sometimes bets you love, you don't feel confident publicly tipping. That was kind of me last week. My Clarkey's Collect was going to be Raiders plus 15, but I just thought that, people wouldn't get around it. I didn't wholly believe in it myself, but with the Roosters 12-point line, that was something I could get around, mate. So Clarkey's Collect, a quick update for everyone, is up 10 units so far, which is hopefully good for everyone. And Winnie, what have you got for us this week in the way of your best bets?
Yeah, you did really well, mate, with Tupou, and he had a double when the Roosters covered the line, as you said. And I know what you mean. Or Raiders, it wouldn't have been too popular. But sometimes those are the best bets to make. And the beauty of that game was I also had a best bet, and I took the other side in Storm, but the Storm did win both halves. My other winning best bets last week were the Roosters, who covered the 12.5 on Sunday. And now I'm totally blanking. Which bet did we win on Friday night? The Dogs under 20.5 team total, which was kind of sweet because they actually won the game. And mixed matchup, we needed the Roosters to score more than the 15 the Dogs got on Friday night in either half. And I think the Roosters got like 20, or I think they got 20, right on 20 in both halves. So that was at least a step in the right direction. And I've got 5 more plays I'm going to share to you all right now. My favorite plays for round 18. On Thursday night, South Sydney -1.5 at $1.90 on better against the Eels. And for me, they're both actually pretty good teams, better than where they sit on the ladder. But bringing back in Latrell Mitchell and Cam Murray to a South side that's had the bye and has real belief this season against an Eels team that had a tough loss that is only playing for pride, I think that line's a little light. I'm going Cronulla Sharks, who play at Coffs against your Titans, -7.5, $1.91 on 365. For me, the Titans are off the bye, which is a plus, although is it a real plus when you had your biggest ever win in club history? They probably don't think there's anything they can get better at. But for Cronulla, this is all about the Sharks needing to bounce back after a really tough loss last week and needing to get around Nico. And the thing is, the Sharks are still firmly in the top 4 and will be as long as they take care of business in these type of games. And the Sharks are full strength. Brimo's in, but Jaden Campbell's out. To me, the Sharks are still significantly better than the Titans. I'm willing to lay 7.5. Friday night, we got the blockbuster, the grand final rematch, and I am taking the Brisbane Broncos in the first half +2.5 at $1.88, Ladbrokes and Neds. This is a monumental game for Brisbane. They are playing to avoid 5 straight defeats. They are playing the team that ripped their heart out of their chest last September. They didn't get the opportunity, they didn't get a fair fight earlier in Penrith for revenge. And you've got your 3 best players 3 of your 4 best players all coming back. I understand that Penrith also returns the Origin contingent, and I think Penrith's bang up for this game as well. But have we forgotten how good Reece Walsh can be? We haven't seen him in a Broncos jersey for a little while, and I just think that home advantage is going to be such a real thing because the crowd is going to sense how important this game is. It's kind of like Brisbane's grand final in July. So I'll take the first half line because I'm a little bit worried about the depth with Brisbane dealing with a few personnel matters. But still, I'm on them first half. Then I'm taking the Cowboys -1.5 at $1.90 on better. They play Manly. It's worth noting Turbo is back, but it's a really simple handicap for me. The Cowboys are at home. Do give Manly a point or a point and a half for being off a bye. but I still think home advantage exceeds that and would put these teams, if they were equal, it would put North Queensland -1.5. I don't think they're equal. North Queensland's getting back 6 Origin players after just beating Penrith in Penrith. Yes, an understrength Penrith, but still, that's going to make a mighty difference. I think resting those Origin stars will pay off. Manly comes in fresh too, but it's really just the fact that when I looked at that matchup, I didn't see many great edges for Manly. I think North Queensland wins that. -1.5, you basically just need to win. Of course, it's just not by a field goal. And then I'm going the Knights -3.5 at $1.90 on Sportsbet on Sunday, where they play in Canberra. Biggest factor is a simple one. Kalen Ponga returns early from injury. I've got a Knights team that's been playing really well the last month, haven't got all the results, but got a real confidence-boosting win last weekend. I've got a Raiders team that's played above their ability for the last season and a half, just not quite on the same levels as Knights, especially with Ponga back, in my opinion.
Yeah, mate, I agree with a lot of what you said there. And I actually did back that Knights one. As soon as I saw Kalen Ponga was back in, that line did shift, I won't say significantly, but it shifted 4 points. It was a pick 'em prior. I think that shows what getting your skipper and the reigning Dally medalist can do, though. Alrighty, guys, those are our best bets. Winnie will type those up in the comments for you. But while he does that, let's hear from the CEO of Top Sport. It's Mr. Tristan Merlehan, who has some exclusive market insight.
It's Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport, and we're back into a more normal round where obviously everyone named will play, and before they pick the teams for the last Origin match on the weekend. So there's been a few moves already. The biggest move actually has been the Bunnies against the Eels, where that game's gone from pick'em out to 2.5 in the Bunnies direction. So very much a move after teams for South Sydney. And then obviously there's been 2 big inclusions with Pappenhausen to the side. That one was pretty much factored in. It was 12.5, and that's where it stayed since the teams have gone up. But the one that has seen a decent movement was the Knights moving in that direction, obviously with Kalen Ponga back. So that game was pick'em, and it's now $1.74. Newcastle -2.5. So a couple of sizable shifts there. It'll be interesting to see where both of those markets settle down now that all the news is broken, and obviously we'll see if all of those players do line up as listed. So should be a good weekend of footy before we get back into the problematic rounds where we're missing players again. But the Origin market has stayed pretty solid since we launched as well. We opened up at $1.85, $1.95, and that's where it's still sitting at the moment. So good luck if you're having a bet over the weekend, and obviously gamble responsibly.
Always appreciate that insight from Tristan, and definitely agree with what he said where, when we're in this Origin period, you do enjoy the shorter rounds, getting to see some young kids make their debut, like Casey McLean for the Panthers, for example. But when you do have all 8 games, a normal schedule, all the Origin stars back, it is also equally, or if not way more exciting, actually, if I'm being absolutely honest. Alrighty, Winnie, let's go game by game, mate. First game is at Thursday, 7:50 p.m, where the Eels host the Rabbitohs. We're at CommBank Stadium. The line was set at 1.5 against the Rabbitohs, but that has moved to -2.5 since team lists. They've got their Origin players back on deck. For the Eels, Mike Acevo is out, and Jake Tungo will make his debut on the wing. These sides met earlier this year in Indigenous round, and the Bunnies walked away 42 to 26-point winners. And you think this is going to be a repeat spot for the Bunnies, Winnie? You reckon they can go 2-0 over the Eels this year?
Yes, and my best bet -1.5, but you're right. I think some bookies have already gone to 2.5, including Toppy. And I don't put much stock in the previous matchup where I did back Souths. That would be about 4 or 5 weeks ago now. And I've backed Souths every week since. And they've been on this 4-game winning streak, and I think they do make it 5. But as I say, that particular matchup isn't what's giving me the tell, because there was no Gutho, no Moses. The Eels, I think they'd relieved Arthur of their duties that very week, and they were a bit of a zombie team. The Eels have a little bit more in them right now, but coming off a tough loss, it's clearly just not Parramatta's season, so they can come out and say, oh, we're playing to, not be bottom of the ladder. Well, West's actually got beaten by so much more that the Eels fell and climbed above the Tigers. Look, one thing I will say about being against Parrot, it will be frightening, because you've got a team that's got nothing to lose, that does love to move the footy around and promote the footy, and that's what made that Knights game so enthralling and entertaining. But that's still going to be trumped. A team that's kind of playing with nothing to lose is still trumped, for me, by a team that's got real belief, but also the desperation, because the Eels will be scary when they've got the footy, but how willing are they to defend? And Souths are a very tough side to defend. They've really found that formula with Walker and White in the halves. Latrell comes back. Souths could have played him at centre and stuck with Gray, but to move Latrell to fullback, I think he'll want to prove something there too. And like Murray now, you got him in off the bench last game. You didn't know how much he'd offer, but played very well, then had an outstanding Origin performance, and now, 8 days to turn around. So you forget how good of a forward. Like, he's one of the best players on the planet, Cam Murray. Now he's back in, has been named on an edge, which I don't love, but you've still got the options that he can rotate through. I believe at times Souths could have Koloamatangi and Murray in the edge. That's in the middle, I should say, and that's a scary proposition for Parramatta. I like Para's team. Again, they shouldn't be 16, but Souths are the stronger side to me with more to play for.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually don't mind Cameron Murray on edge because I can see him speeding up that ruck speed. And we know someone like Cody isn't afraid to take on the short side. It makes Latrell dangerous on an edge as well. So I think it's not a bad move, especially when you consider the numbers Keon's been putting up in the middle there at lock recently. Really, when you look at the last 5 of these both sides, this shouldn't be a really close game at all. We've got the Bunnies. They're trying to make it 5 straight, and they've been well rested during that period with 2 buys. And we've got the Eels, who are looking to avoid 4 straight. And I really think what makes this market as close as it is, genuinely, is the Mitchell Moses X factor. Like, if he got pulled out of this game tomorrow for the Eels, that line would blow out in South's favour, in my opinion. He almost won the game for them last round in Newcastle, and I think that's the only thing holding the Eels in here is what the market deems a close game there. I think it is worth noting that game in Newcastle was a tough battle for at least 75 minutes until the Eels kind of gave in and it was over there. Whilst the Rabbitohs, they're fresh off a bye. Their Origin players didn't back up. They went back and did rehab and rested for the weekend, where the Eels Origin players are still carrying that load. We saw the impact Mitchell Moses brought returning from that Blues game in his return for the Eels. Now we get a chance to see Latrell and Cameron Murray. And it can be argued, whilst they're not in a half position, they are still just as important to their side's success. And that is a huge factor I'm going to have to weigh in here. I look at the Eels. I think, yes, they're out of last place. That was the burning reason whilst I tipped them last round against the Knights. But the reality is they are still equally in just as bad of a spot. It's only the Tigers for and against that has them out of last place. I don't think there's too much belief left in this side. While I do see a lot of belief in the Bunnies right now, they have won 7 of their last 8 games against the Eels. That one loss in that period was at Allianz Stadium. It wasn't at this stadium. At this stadium, the Bunnies have not lost to the Eels in over 5 years. So I do have to back South head-to-head. Latrell, Cody, they'll be combining on that left edge with Murray's ruck speed. And I think that leans naturally to an Alex Johnston try. He's scored 18 tries in his past 14 against the Eels. So Winnie, I'm going to go Rabbitohs head-to-head, Alex Johnston anytime for my tip in this game.
And when you spoke about the Eels Origin players, mate, which players were you talking about?
Just Mitchell Moses for them.
Yeah, that's right. There is only one, but I had that point as well. Like, in the back of Moses's head, he knows all he has to do is get through this game, and then he has the biggest game of his life. It doesn't matter if they win, they lose. It doesn't matter if he plays badly. He's going to be there for the Blues. Like, that's not exactly the motivation that you want behind the most important player who is still dealing with the foot injury. Gutho doesn't look completely himself right now. Like, obviously, he returned from that knee surgery. Just not quite the same player that could bust open a game. And you talked about this try-scoring prowess of Johnston, but it's worth mentioning Mike Acevo is out this week for Para as well. And I'm glad to not have to face him because I know that he's a tough man to handle one-on-one on the try line.
Oh, definitely. And even in general field, I mean, he ran the ball hard at Phoenix Crossland last round, and he's out for 11 days with a concussion. So you replace him with a debutant. You have to think a debutant, it would be a daunting task. Going up against the Bunnies, not because of their ladder position, but the stars in their team and what they're capable of regardless. Alrighty, mate. Game 2, Friday, 6 p.m. Sharks host the Titans. We're at Coffs Harbour, and the line was set at -7.5 against the Sharks before team lists. There's been no move there. Sione Katoa is out. He's shown delayed concussion symptoms from last round. So Daniel Atkinson, their backup half, he goes on the wing there. Worth noting, he has played centres internationally for Italy. For the Titans, AJ Brimson is back. Jaden Campbell is out. And Moeki Fotuaika returns from Origin. Winnie, this is a complete mismatch on paper, realistically. We have third versus third last. The Titans have never won at this venue, and the Sharks have won their last 9 in a row over the Titans. The question I had for you is an upset on the cards, but I now know that you are with the Sharkies in this one.
Sorry to break it to you. And look, again, this year's been a mismatch, the bookies versus me. The bookies have towed me up. But look, since you're mentioning on paper, we have the best bet record on the screen. I don't know if you can edit that in real time. I did realize we added 3 wins in the win column on the weekend. So it's 29 and 38, not 26 and 38. Not that that's much better, but they're all important. And there's still a long way to go this year. I haven't given up, that's for sure. Now, in this game, I know that the Titans haven't given up, but once again, they will be a team that will, I think, be hot and cold. And some nights, if it's not the Titans' night and it's all a bit too hard and the opponent's just dialed in, I just don't think that the Titans are good enough to turn the tide in some of these matches. This might be a bit simplistic, but I do kind of think of the Titans as a much better daytime football team as opposed to nighttime, where I actually think the strength of the Titans, the Sharks, and the grit and grind of the Sharks is going to play into their hands. So you may have the Coffs Harbour record. I do feel like it's not obviously not a home game for Cronulla, but there's more familiarity there for the Sharks making this trip. And to me, it's like very disappointing month of footy where the Sharkies were top of the ladder and they're sliding, but they're still going to be top 4 if they win the games they should win. The Sharks are still full strength. A lot of criticism about their most important player. The only way to stop that noise is really coming out and winning, and they're going to have to do it as a team. And if the rest of the team plays well, I guarantee you, Nico will do well off the back of it. And I think the side will rally around Nico. I look at the Sharkies were 4.5-point favourites away to Canterbury, and now they're 7.5, kind of on a neutral to the Titans. I mean, the Dogs are having a lot better year than the Titans are. So that line is not much different. I think there's a lack of trust with the punters in Cronulla, but it's still a side that is stronger across the park. And I think that the Sharkies win this and win well.
I do think that's an interesting insight. You look at the Bulldogs, who have conceded the least tries of anyone in this competition, and we've got a 4.5 line there, right? Whereas we go against the Titans, who we know not to be a strong defensive side, and that only increases by 3, and they become the home team. So that is an interesting insight there to consider. And for me, as a Titans fan, I can honestly say the fact that we are coming off our biggest win in club history is not a positive here. Because every time our club has had these big moments throughout our history, and they're probably not big to other clubs, but they are to us, we've struggled with consistency, and we've really struggled to back up when there's expectation on us. The Titans are the sort of team that will beat the Melbourne Storm but lose to the West Tigers. And we almost shown you that this year, actually. We only just lost to the Storm, but then lost to the Tigers. We're that sort of team, honestly. We've only won 2 of our away games so far this year. One of those was at Suncorp, which is an hour up the road, and the other was in New Zealand, strangely enough, but we have no wins in New South Wales. Meanwhile, the Sharkies are 3 from 3 in Coffs Harbour. They've never lost at this venue. And I just think that because they haven't been horrible in their last 2, that could be why this line hasn't gone out too much. Like a few things go different in both those games, Winnie, and they probably win. It's a combined losing margin of 3, and they lose 4 competition points in that process. They lost more ladder points than the margins they lost by. So you could say they've been a touch unlucky. I think the only way you go Titans in this one is if you think that the pressure's in Nico's head and you think that Hines isn't going to respond. But then I would just caution that with, are the Titans going to respond after recording their largest ever victory? And my gut feeling, love my team, I don't think we will. Last year, the Sharkies, they had a real reputation for bullying lower tier competition, and the bulk of that side is still together. So I do believe they're more than capable of winning here. I think they're going to look at their draw. They're going to say, all right, we've got the Titans this week, boys. We've got the Tigers next week, and we've got a bye. This is a period where they can rebound realistically and rebound in a big way. So I do expect my Titans to show some fight. I don't think it'll come super easy for the Sharkies. I don't think we'll be blown out of the water. But I have to say, I will back you here, mate. I'll say Sharks at the line for my tip in this one.
And I think your point about the last couple of games, the start will be key because, yes, the Sharks lost by 2 and then by 1. And one game had a conversion attempt to send it to extra time. The other game went to extra time. But the common thread between those matches, the Sharkies started so poorly. They're down 22-0 to the Dolphins and having to chase, and they're down 12-0 to the Dogs last week. So you take away those bad starts, and it could have been comfortable victories because the Sharkies did dominate those matches for the better part of the second halves. The Cronulla game, the Canterbury game, the Sharkies probably got on top from like the 20-minute mark. And Dolphins definitely like probably the 30-minute or 35th minute. So they can remedy these slow starts. Then I think Cronulla is on a different level.
That's very true. And if they were to start slow again, and it did become a theme, unfortunately to say, the Titans are probably the team you are confident you can run down in the second half, just due to the. I mean, we saw it live at Suncorp, but we're not going to talk about that. Let's move on to Game 3, which is at Suncorp Stadium. Friday, 8 p.m, the Broncos host the Panthers. Line was set at -2.5 before Panthers. Post-team list, that's now moved to -4.5. Both sides welcome back their origin players. It is reported that Katoni Staggs will not play in this game due to a personal reason. So that moves Dean Mariner to centres and Corey Oates to the wing. And we are getting another rematch. We got it in round 3, but Walsh had his face broken earlier that night and Reynolds was out. Now they face each other again, but unfortunately for the Broncos, Winnie, they're still not at full strength, but you think they can have a good crack at it in the first half at least?
Yeah, so if the line has moved from 2.5 today to 4.5 based on team lists, then you have to question, well, what was the news that came out? So I suppose it is the Stags not being injured, but being in the reserves. So you're hearing he's definitely not playing. Because I thought, well, reserves, I'm backing Brisbane, but maybe I've still got that outside chance. Do we know anymore?
Said it was unlikely due to a personal reason. Unlikely. That's all the club said.
Okay. In any case, I actually thought moving Mariner to centre, where he doesn't have to field so many kicks, and bringing Corey Oates in, it's pretty decent cover. You're right about the game earlier this year. Haas was ruled out that week that he needed surgery. Reynolds was not going to be available, and then they lost Walsh 3 minutes in. So it just wasn't a fair fight. We get a bunch of Origin stars returning. I think it's 3 for Brisbane, and it's 4 or 5, maybe at least 4 for Penrith because Yo did back up. I've got Brisbane off 4 straight losses, can you believe? But people are going to tell you, well, Penrith also is off a loss. And this Penrith side doesn't lose back-to-back very often at all. You do worry about Brisbane at this point in the season getting a bit thin. But the fact that they can bring in those 3 stars this week, returning to Suncorp, where last couple of times Brisbane played at Suncorp, they've underwhelmed and actually lost those, thinking those last 2 would be Sharks and Titans. But we know in general that Suncorp's a fortress and that the Brisbane crowd gets behind the team. And I think the importance of the game won't be lost on anybody. I think that's evidenced by the fact that Kevy was willing to rest his 3 best players available in a really important New Zealand game, but perhaps because he had one eye ahead to this one Friday night, avoiding 5 straight losses, and you already find yourselves outside the 8, which is just unacceptable for Brisbane with the ability they know they've still got. And look, some great names coming into this Penrith team. I really don't want to detract from Penrith because there's not much I can say. I can say, hey, there's still not the same team without Nathan Cleary. And Penrith had more of the ball against the Cowboys and only mustered 6 points, and still had Yo in that game, and still had some good players that should have been able to take advantage and do better. But for me, Penrith, bolstered by their stars, will probably play really well and could still win. But I just thought to get the key number now that line has moved, and to get 2.5 in the first half, where I really think Brisbane is going to throw everything at Penrith, and there'll be a lot of pressure on the Panthers early, and it'll be a question of whether Penrith can absorb that. And getting back to the fact that can't you just feel like a Walsh game is coming? Because for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to break out in the big ones. He would have loved to, kill it in Origin 1. It wasn't to be. Had to be stood down for 2 straight club games. He would have been burning. Queensland gets dominated in Origin 2, doesn't get that opportunity. He's rested against New Zealand. Here's the chance back on his home turf. I think Walsh is the best player on the planet when he's firing. But I think he's shown that he is that this season. And I haven't backed Brisbane too many times, so I'm really looking forward to being on him. It's going to be a lot more fun. So don't let me down, Reece Lightning. Cobbo, again, is another player maybe needs to make a statement before Origin squads are picked. So to me, it's just like I'm taking Brisbane at home in an all-in spot.
Well, if Walsh gets injured again, Queenslanders can come for your head because I think you were on the Broncos that night as well when he got taken out early. Was that? And then Haas got removed. Haas got removed through the week. Everything that could have went wrong for us went wrong there. Look, for this game, I look at the Broncos and the same steel that was in their defense last year, which really was their DNA and what made them such a great side. It's just not there anymore. They're conceding an average of 7 more points per game than the Panthers this year. So more than a converted try there. I looked at their last 4 games, which is their 4-game losing streak, and they haven't held a side to below 20. And I just feel with that recent form over the snapshot of a month, this Panthers side does have more than 20 points in them. And I know that they can defend 20 points also. So I went and had a look at the Panthers' last 5 games. Now, in that period, it reads 3 wins, 2 losses. So not that great at all by the Panthers standard. But in that period, they're only conceding an average of 16 points against them per game. So still better than the Broncos there. They completed a higher percentage. They defended a higher efficiency percentage. Their ruck speed is quicker on average. And it's tough as Suncorp is as a home venue. They do have a better than 50-50 winning record there, winning 55% of their games. They'd be one of the few clubs, I'd imagine, that does have a winning record in Suncorp. The Broncos have lost 3 of their last 4 at home as well, and the Panthers have only lost 1 of their last 8 games to the Broncos. It's also been 5 years since the Panthers lost to the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium. When I pile all that together, the last 2 stats I want to throw at you, Winnie. Reece Walsh, I agree with you. He can be a massive factor in this game, but he has lost his last 6 games in a row to the Panthers, extending back to his Warriors time. And the Panthers Origin players coming back in here, I just get the feeling like we saw Mitchell Moses return with that Origin form against the Knights last week. These blue players for the Panthers, I think they're going to come back and really want to pile some more, damage on the Maroons in the Broncos side. I think they'll want to pile a lot more pain on them, so I will back them to do that. Every single consideration stat I read out there leads me to the Panthers winning, so I'll have to back the stats there, and I will say Panthers at the line for my tip.
And I would just like to say again, let's take a moment and remember what an amazing game of footy that grand final was. And Broncos fans don't want to remember how it ended, but that was, again, a ridiculous comeback, and it's just going to be so exciting to see, how does Penrith handle Ezra Mam? Is he a smoky for Origin if Billy actually feels he does need to shake up the attack? I feel like Mam is going to benefit so much more by having his other superstar teammates back beside him. Look, AJ commented there that my Walsh best player on the planet is a crazy take. And I just think that's actually fun to speculate. If not, throw some other names at me. Who's the best player in the world right now? And from a betting perspective, who's the player you want the most of anyone on your team or you least want to bet against? I don't actually think I'm wrong with Walsh, how electric he's been. Nathan Cleary's sidelined, right? But what other names are people throwing at me that are clearly better than Reece Walsh right now? Even you look to be searching. Like Ryan says Dylan Edwards. If you want to put Edwards in the discussion as, being as good as Walsh and, and having different strengths, I won't strongly disagree with you, but I don't think I'm crazy if I take Walsh over Edwards.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at my all NRL first team and the spine this year on form. I've got Dylan Edwards, Matt Burton, Jerome Hughes, and Reece Robson. I'd feel more comfortable coming up against any one of those than I would Reece Walsh.
I'll tell you what, betting against Stephen Crichton right now is frightening, and I put him up there in the form he's in. Someone said Moses. Right, Moses right now as flames coming off him, what we saw on Wednesday and on Saturday night at McDonald Jones too. But there's other guys like Latrell. Latrell's come back into form, but you probably wouldn't say he's the best in the world. Turbo returns this week, but not even playing fullback. We'll get to that soon. So I stand by what I said. I said what I said, but it's just a fun little side discussion that we can continue on in the comments.
Yeah, it was good to see people get involved. Paul from Instagram says Dylan Edwards. Aaron says the hammer. Mr. BRK Lynn says Reece Walsh talent. Dylan Edwards, you're getting the work ethic. And I just think final point, Winnie, Do you think that Kalen Ponga returning and also AJ Brimson returning could fire up Reece Walsh a little bit extra as well, just to show exactly who he is again?
I don't think he needs it. I just think that like Walsh has showed so much pride in that Broncos jersey, and I really do think it would have burned him to not be there and not be able to help for most of these losses. And Brisbane needs this win for multiple reasons. And of all opponents, the team where there are demons that need to be vanquished, like Walsh doesn't have to worry about his origin spot or anything this year, or probably proving anything. I think he just really wants to do it for the home faithful, and they'll get a massive crowd. And I'm backing that Walshy will have some moments of brilliance, just hopefully in the first half. You know, I don't want to see you down 4 at halftime and then a Walsh masterclass leads Brisbane to an upset. I'll be stiff as anything. It's got to be Walshy from the start.
Yeah, fingers crossed he comes out firing for our best bet there. And guys, don't forget, Friday Night Footy also means an exclusive Better Same Game Multi crafted by the man above me himself. Better also provides further NRL talk and tips in the Fox Sports Lab, which you can check out on their YouTube channel. That comes out each Wednesday. And always importantly, think, is this a bet you really want to place? For free and confidential advice, call the number or visit the website in the show description. Game 4, Saturday, 3 p.m. Bulldogs host the Warriors. We're at Accor Stadium. The line was set at -6.5 against Doggies prior to team list. That moved ever so slightly to -6.5 post team lists. Connor Tracy returns, so that means Jacob Carraz goes back to the wing. Kurt Mann returns on the bench. And for the Warriors, there are no changes. Now, these sides meet for the first time this year, Winnie, but the Warriors did go 2-0 last year in 2023. Do you think the Bulldogs will be hungry for revenge here? And if so, can they get it?
Well, the Bulldogs are just having that kind of year. I think the Bulldogs' biggest motivation driver is keeping this home unbeaten streak alive. There's a couple of funny comments in there, like Brent Naden. Look, Adam comments, Kalen Ponga, the best in the world, but he's been out all this time. So I trust Walsh right now as opposed to KP, but KP's definitely in the conversation. I probably would have said Ponga was the best player in the world last year, where he did win the Dally M, alongside Cleary. But on his day, Ponga as terrifying as anyone. And Colt's saying Jerome Hughes as well. And Foz?
Kieran Ford?
That might be a bit of, yeah, I hope not. But I'm not sure what else that would be. Time to move on. Let's move to this game where Tracy is back as a big in for the Dogs, along with Kurt Mann off the bench. New Zealand unchanged off the win. I go back to the fact I should have absolutely been on New Zealand last week. Again, had them written as a best bet, but the line had shifted, and then it's just hard to lock it in live. I still should have, but that one's gone now. When you want to take a team, I think it is an important lesson. When you want to bet on a team, or you feel you should have, and then you don't, and they win, don't back them the next week because you wish you were on last week. Like last week's gone. So I felt like part of me was like, I'm taking the Warriors this week, 6.5 I could find. They've revitalized their season again. They got that must win at home. But I think part of me was just wishing I'd grabbed them last week in the mother of all bounce back spots. The thing is, do I really want to go against this Bulldogs side that has all the confidence in the world? I mean, how many years are we talking about? 8 years missing the finals. And now this team's just finding ways to win week in, week out. And I think a game like last week can do wonders, where you really shouldn't win from being up 12 to down 4 or maybe down 2, but giving up 3 straight tries and the other team just steamrolling you with the momentum late in the game, the other side that's higher on the ladder, and the Doggies just clawing in and finding a way to come back and winning it with a field goal off the upright in extra time after you dodged a bullet with a shot from right in front. Those are just those confidence-boosting wins that everybody's just up and about at training, and the Dogs believe they can do something really special this year. So does the fan base. So I feel like you get more and more fans to these games to be a part of protecting this real home advantage that the Dogs have built. And clearly it is a true home advantage when you play a team that's traveling internationally. I've questioned whether you get much advantage in Sydney derbies, but I think the crowd alone has given an edge. So it's crowd plus travel in this one is very meaningful. I talked about Stephen Crichton. Like, there's something to be said for just a player that's in the absolute prime of his life and prime form of his life. And it's terrifying for opponents. Even if he doesn't touch the ball, he's a decoy. But every touch Stephen Crichton has seems to make something happen. And Burton's brimming with confidence as well. I mean, I asked you who's the best player on the planet. You don't believe it's Burton, but you threw his name out there, right? In like your all NRL team this year. He's in fantastic form. I think, unfortunate not to be in the blue side. They still would have won in Melbourne if it was Burton instead of Luai. But in any case, it's great news for the Dogs, and he can prove what he can do. And if the Dogs had a weakness, it was their middle forwards, and that would be the key to victory for New Zealand, would be more firepower in the forwards. But I've really noticed the Dogs' middles are stepping up as well. So the yardage battle is the key to victory in this one. New Zealand must win that to have a chance. If the Doggies match it, I think there's more class outside and in the spine for Canterbury. So having said all of that, I still lean to New Zealand, but there was enough to like about the Bulldogs as to why I didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to find a tip and who I prefer in this game. So I did go a different way with my final tip, but I'll start with this. For good and bad reasons, it's been so tough to get a read on this Warriors side in their last 5 games. Like, we have a side that lost to, at the time, the 17th place Titans by 60, but then they beat last year's grand finalists, the Broncos, by 16. They beat the Cowboys in Townsville by 30. And at the time, they beat the top 4 Dolphins. So the level of inconsistency there is massive. And the only factor really between those games was Sean Johnson being in and out. I think this Warriors side looks a lot better with Tamari Martin at halfback. And I think he has an opportunity to really prove his worth again this week and show that he can not only be the long-term 7 for this club, but even remain as a 7 this year and have Sean Johnson come back as a 5'8". But I look at this game specifically, and I actually think it could be a really low-scoring, boring game of footy. I don't say that to discredit either side, but both of these teams like to play the long game. I'm thinking an unders play here, Winnie. Now, both sides average a combined 42 points per game that's scored, and they concede an average combined of 39. So we can middle that out to 40.5. And I'm leaning that way because it is so hard to split these sides. And when you try to break it down stats-wise, Warriors have won their past 6 over the Bulldogs, but Bulldogs have not lost at a core this year where they're 6 from 6. So that doesn't help me either. So I go to the Bulldogs. They concede the lowest amount of tries against them out of any team in this competition this year. And I get a feeling that won't actually deter the Warriors and make them search for points. I think they'll remain patient. I remember the Dolphins game in New Zealand a few weeks ago. That was a super close game as well. And Tamari Martin just kept putting that grubber in and just getting the repeat set over and over and over. So I did find under at 45.5 in most places at about $1.90. And I'm going to throw that forward as my tip here. I think this will be a low-scoring, gritty affair by both sides.
And Ryan has commented that he's on under 46.5. I think it was Ryan that actually said he even jumped out and played that early on Sunday. Like, you can't go too wrong playing Dogs games under this year. As Ryan notes, they've gone under the total 14 of 17. And knowing Ryan, he would have known how to shop around and get the best available. So it's very logical. I guess the only counter argument I'm going to make to you is it's a daytime game, which I feel like it's better playing conditions generally, is slightly more worrying. And the Warriors being so inconsistent that they are also just capable of those no-shows. And the Dogs have got so much energy and confidence that Canterbury will make the Warriors pay if they're not switched on. But maybe under is a great pseudo bet for the Warriors. If you think the Warriors can step up and give a good crack here, then you could play under, or a line total double, like a Warriors plus 6.5 and under 45.5 type bet. Because I think, if the Warriors defend, you definitely can trust that the Doggies are defending to a high level.
Completely agree. Those are definitely interesting insights to consider as well. Game 5 is at Saturday, 5:30 p.m, where the Tigers host the Storm. We're at Leichhardt Oval, and the line was set at -12.5 against Melbourne. That line hasn't changed, and I'm interested that it didn't change because Harry Grant is out. He's still not returning. Ryan Pappenhausen is back, so Suafalongo drops to the bench. For the Tigers, just the one change, Charlie Staines wing, Solomone Fatape centre, and Brent Naden out. I'll show my hand early here. Storm 13+. it just seems way too obvious. Like, am I missing something there, do you think? Or are you pretty confident Storm put them away as well?
Let me ask you this. If you liked Storm 13 plus when the line was, 12.5 today, and then you find out Harry Grant's not playing, you can't be as confident anymore because that line should drop, right?
It
so
should.
You have to feel like now I've got the same bet, but the captain and best player. Well, Hughes is going so well, it's not fair to say Grant's exactly the best, but one of the very best, most important players is out. It just goes to show that nobody really wants to take the Tigers, and I'm in that boat as well, I'd have to say. And look, Garlick is that quality that he's covering well, and I don't know the extent of the Grant injury because it's one thing for a player to be rested after Origin, very understandable, but it's quite another for him to not even be named at all in the 21 this week. However, knowing what you have in Garlick probably gives you that luxury that if Grant, whatever, if it's just got a lingering injury or soreness, that Garlick can make the most of this opportunity. And then Pappenhausen's named to be back. He did return a couple of weeks ago, then was withdrawn last week. If you trust that Pappenhausen's back, Xavier Coates a big loss with the hamstring injury on the wing. But to me, Farlongo's got to play wing. They've moved Farlongo to the interchange bench, but I just have to I want Pappy and Farlongo on the field for 80 minutes if I am the Storm. Remus Smith is also in the reserves, so there's a possibility to bolster the back line, whether Smith could come in at centre and someone else could shift out too. There's those possibilities. The Melbourne Storm haven't actually put a lot of sides away this year. So although plenty of people will play 13 plus, you'd have to put a team to the sword to cover that double-digit line. And even on the weekend at home to the Raiders, it was only a 10-point win. The thing is, the Tigers are, unfortunately, at this point in the season, probably as weak as any side in the comp. And they got that reality check against the Roosters. You get Bateman back, but Johnny Bateman has not quite had a remarkable year this year. Not a player that I think instantly is a guy that can turn the tables for you if you're up against it in a tough game. And Melbourne always makes it a tough game for you. I mean, former Storm outside back Olam in the reserves could potentially help the Tigers too. Staines returns on a wing. There's value in playing it at Leichhardt for sure. The crowd gets up for it, and the Tigers know they've got nothing to lose. They've got a few signature wins, probably not as many as they would have hoped, but I think they've got the same or one more win than last year. Nobody expected a lot from West this year, and a game like this, nobody expects them to win. So there's that nuisance value, and there's like a limited amount of pressure while you're still playing in front of your home faithful. And I also just wonder if there's a mentality of Melbourne of like, they don't mind if they've just got to grind out the win. They're not necessarily trying to blow everybody away, but what they are trying to do is limit the opponent opportunities and keep them sort of at arm's length. So I also thought I could only play Melbourne, but I was thinking to myself, it's pretty obvious after the West got rolled by 40 last week, and now there's no Harry Grant, so I'll leave it alone.
Yeah, I am disappointed Grant is out. I thought he was just rested last week due to that face cut. So I did bet on the Storm already, thinking that line would continue to move out. And I thought getting it, at the 13-point mark was probably where I wanted it. But it seems like I have missed an opportunity there, really, because Harry Grant out does change this game. Bronson Garlick was great last week, but Grant is someone who's played for the Tigers before. He's the captain, like you said, and he'd still be stinging from the Origin game 2 defeat there. And the Tigers have upset the Storm a few times now. I think they upset in Billy Slater's 300th NRL game and one of Craig Bellamy's coaching milestone games. I remember both of those things because I was on the Storm thinking it's such a big occasion there. When I look at this Tigers side here and now, I think they were snapped a little bit back into reality last round with a 34-point humbling against the Roosters. Previous to that, they did win 2 in a row, but I think that loss last week is probably more closer to where they are, especially against the elite sides of this competition, which I deem the Storm and Roosters to be. You look across the fence at the Storm, they are riding a 4-game winning streak. In that streak, they are scoring an average of 30 points, which is right around the mark to which the Tigers lost by last week to the Roosters. Then when we look at season averages, the Tigers score an average of 17 points per game to the Storm's 26, and the Tigers concede an average of 26 to the Storm's 19. When you put that all together, you get the Storm being a 16 points better per game across the season average, and that is above the 13-plus mark that I'm chasing. Important to note, though, with those stats, we're also getting a Storm side that had Munster, had Grant, and other players fit at the time. So probably not quite at that potent mark of 16 points better at this stage, but I'm still going to back them here, Winnie. We'll have to because I've already bet on them. They have won their last 6 in a row over the Tigers. I hope the bookies haven't set a trap for me, but I do like Storm 13+.
And not to make you feel even less confident, but Ryan makes the point that I had also considered as well, which probably just shows what a great bet the Roosters were last week. But the Roosters were at home to the Tigers, and the line was 12.5. Now, the Roosters were pretty close to full strength on Sunday. I know Swali is injured, but other than that, the Roosters were, very strong. This is a Melbourne team with no Harry Grant, no Cam Munster, right? And it's a Melbourne team travelling to Sydney, so they're away as opposed to the Roosters were at home. And we've got the same line. So how does that work, right? Because that Roosters team's definitely better than Melbourne, and it's home versus away. So should the line last week have been closer to 20? Arguably it probably should have been. But if you played the Roosters last week, it doesn't mean you have to play the Storm again this week against West, because I don't think it's as good of a bet. Doesn't mean it can't win, though. So wish you luck, or anyone else that goes 13+. But unfortunately, I'm not playing the Tigers either, but it does feel a little bit like a trap to me.
It does feel like a trap. I mean, there was a game last year, the Raiders versus, maybe it was the Tigers, and it might have been that strange one where the Tigers started to come back, and it was a trap. I remember that one too. Alrighty, Game 6, Saturday, 7:35 p.m. Cowboys host Manly in Townsville. The line was set at -1.5 against Cowboys. That has not changed. Cowboys do welcome back their Origin players. Meanwhile, Manly welcome back Turbo at centre. That moves Kohler to fullback, Hopper White to the bench. Aloiai and their Origin captains are back also. And these sides are meeting for the first time this year, Winnie. The Seagulls actually have a 100% winning record at this stadium. They've gone 2 from 2. But you don't believe they can make it 3 from 3. You are with the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, this is a super enticing matchup, and these teams will both be almost unrecognizable with the talent that's coming back. But let's start with Manly, as you say. So Turbo finally returning, and the choice to play him at centre, which would reduce the amount of times he's running with the ball in space, which on one hand isn't not what you want to do when you've got such a damaging player. But I guess it reduces the amount of times that Turbo hits top speed, where there could be that risk of a re-injury. I'm sure he'll still be very dominant from that position. I don't want to underestimate Turbo. I think betting against Manly this week, I have the possibility that there's a few cobwebs there and that Turbo, will be better for the run in a week or two. But I've seen games before where Turbo's out and then comes back in, and Manly's a totally different team and he hits the ground running. So I'm not suggesting Turbo will be overly rusty. You've got the Origin trio, as you said, and O'Shea Ole, plus Garrick, which is a big into, especially with the improved goal kicking that you get there compared to what you were trying to cover those duties with. Then you can say the Cows are a brand new team as well, with 6 reps rejoining the side. And I feel like it was a dice roll to rest everybody, with Toddy Payton making that choice for the trip down to Penrith. But that really pays off when you win. And if these guys can all come back and then lead the Cows to a win in a really important game here, which any game between the sides in the middle of the ladder is vital, because they can all be 4-point swings. So I really didn't dislike Manly this week. I wasn't rushing out to bet against Manly. I know in general I haven't rated them as high as others, so I've been against them more often than on. I want to give Manly credit for, the benefit of having the bye. Thought they hung pretty tough against Souths, even though it was a very vanilla game plan. And it was a heroic victory to beat the Dragons. I haven't forgotten about that one at Brookie either. But still, North Queensland in Townsville, despite the fact Manly might have got them at the new stadium twice, I've got to give at least 3 points for that home field there. And I do think the Cowboys are the clear better team to me across the park. I'm just not sure where you would say the major advantage to Manly is. I guess you would say halfback, right, with the form of DC versus Townsend. But, the Cowboys have got Dearden in their halves and get extra playmaking support from Drinky and an origin hooker as well in Robson, compared to the fact that Lockie Croker is still out for Manly and they're not quite the same team without him. I think the Cowboys bench is stronger as well. The fact that Manly's carrying Hopewadi into the game, it's almost like an injury precaution, and you're giving up a bench spot just because you can't be certain with Turbo. So it's not ideal either. So there's enough reasons for me to believe. I thought this line should be 4.5, and I'll play it at only 1.5.
Mate, I'm against you here, but it's for a different reason than strict footy analysis. I'm going to say history repeats itself here, Winnie. So we go down to Sydney, and the Cowboys had a great win over the Roosters, who are a top 4 side, and no one really expected it. They then returned to Townsville as favourites, and they lost by 30 points to the New Zealand Warriors. Now, they just had another win over the Panthers in Sydney, who are a top 4 side, and they return home as favourites again. Now, I'm going to go full gypsy mode here. I don't have a crystal ball. I have a basketball that my son slightly chewed on. This is my crystal ball. Manly Sea Eagles has 4 less characters in its name than New Zealand Warriors, and the Warriors won by 30. I'm going to take 4 points away there. The Manly Sea Eagles have won 7 games this year, so I'm going to throw that into my ball and deduct that, add it to my formula, mix it all up. I'm at 19 now. So if my sorcery is correct, Manly minus 18.5 is my play here. I need them to win 19 or more, and I actually think they can. Just super revitalized by having both Origin captains back and their best player in Tom Trbojevic. Now, that line, when I checked earlier, paid $7. Please gamble responsibly. But the Cowboys have only won 3 of their past 8 games in Townsville, so it's not too much of a fortress for them this year, less than 50%. And the Sea Eagles have not been defeated in Townsville since 2016, which includes their old stadium as well. So Manly minus 18.5 Winnie at $7. That's my play.
Ryan comments, it could be a volatile game. Don't mind your tip. There are certain games where you've got inconsistent teams, and it definitely pays to back the extremes, because when a side like the Cows are on, they could win it by 20. And when they're off, they could definitely lose by 20. If you're getting $7, talk to me after the show. I'll give you $8 about that. I don't see that happening in this game. And I'll tell you what, the fact that you brought up that North Queensland played without the Origin reps, got a great win. They all came back in and laid an egg, right? And they played worse with the best players. I actually think that's awesome motivation for them all to prove their worth. This time around, they got rested. Again, the backups got the job done. Now, it's on these guys, the 6 of them, to come in and actually lift the team up and not repeat the mistakes and embarrassment of that humbling defeat at the hands of the Warriors. And, I mean, we would say that Manly, especially with Turbo back, is probably a similar level to New Zealand, a similar caliber team and a similar challenge. And North Queensland was a bigger favourite in that game against New Zealand, and had a couple of Origin stars out, like Taulagi was out and Cotter, I think, or Nane. But a couple of the Origin reps were out, whereas here the Cows are full strength. So to me, I think I'm getting line value. But you are hot with your tips lately, and we've been keeping a record, so it's there for everyone to see. So it doesn't give me great confidence that you're going the other way, but nevertheless, maybe we can have a side bet.
Well, we'll have to negotiate that one post this show. But no, actually, look, I'm not sure that they will win by 20, but, it's fun to throw some more bold tips out there now and then. And if they do pay off, then it's an awesome feeling for people that get on, even if you just sprinkle a little bit on it for fun. It's fun to do every now and then. Game 7, mates, Sunday, 2 p.m. Roosters host the Dragons. We're at Allianz Stadium. The line was set at minus 13.5 against the Chookies, and it remained that way after team list. Joey Manu out, Michael Jennings returns. For the Dragons, they welcome back Zach Lomax. And we know these sides met on Anzac Day, and it was a bloodbath because we were on the Roosters as a best bet. They won 60-18. And I know that previously you have really liked sides in revenge spots. Do you like the Dragons here at all? I can't remember if they were one of your best bets.
Oh, you know what? That's definitely a good point you raise. And I strongly considered playing St. George in this one. Start with the fact that you can say they're both coming in good form. The Roosters won by 40, but of course, just earlier that afternoon, the Dragons won by 20 against top 8 Finn side. Then you look at personnel. The Roosters lost Joey Manu, which is a really key out. They're not quite the same proposition, the same threat without what Manu can do from the centre position. Meanwhile, the Dragons added their biggest weapon in Zach Lomax, and he's obviously a weapon in the kicking game, yardage and goal kicking as well. Jack Bird is in the reserves too. So these are all kind of little factors that I feel are in St. George's favour. It's a big line. Like, that's a 13-point line would usually be reserved generally for bottom 4 sides. But this Dragons team finds themselves in the 8, has all the belief in the world that they're a competitive side and that they can be there at the end of the year. I think the fact that the Roosters already smoked St. George earlier this year is advantage St. George as well, because it is a revenge spot. But then I probably would say the Chooks just seem to be suited to a daytime game. I think the Dragons might prefer to catch the Roosters at night and try and make it a bit more of a ugly grinding affair, whereas the Chookies they're just humming right now. I mean, if the strength of the Dragons side is the relentless forward pack and the depth of the pack, that's mitigated here when you've got a Roosters bench that's got Nafua White, Terrell May, Butcher, Spencer Lenu, like those players that could all just about start for any other clubs. Guys in career form, Angus Crichton, Connor Watson. I mean, Radley, Collins, they're going as well as they probably have in their careers, and even Cheese on this little bit of the redemption arc. I strongly considered playing the Dragons. I think if they hadn't won by 20 last week as well, maybe I would be on them. And I also have avoided the bet because I generally just respect that the Roosters are locked in right now and on this surge and have been finding a way to get results. I think I've said a few times that humbling defeat is it the Cowboys game, which came right before the Roosters went into a bye. That was, I think, where they really stared themselves in the mirror and said, what kind of team do we want to be? Because the Roosters side has grand final aspirations. There's last dance vibes to me, really, when you consider like Warrior Hargraves is probably retiring. Manu's gone, Swali's gone, right? I feel like I'm missing even more. Or like Kiri's retiring, right? There's going to be significant turnover. Did I miss anyone major?
Daniel Tupou perhaps will be retiring as well.
Tupanua, right? But so I just feel like they know that the opportunity that's in front of them right now, and I'll be fine not going against this Roosters team. The thing is, I think it's unpredictable how this game could play out. Like, the Dragons could make a game of this, and if they do, you'd be like, oh, geez, I'd love to have plus 13.5. Like, this is anyone's game. The Dragons are up for it. But it's also one of these ones where if the Dragons lapse at all, the Roosters can hurt you as much as anyone. We've really seen that their ability to strike. It's not going to be quite as potent when you got Jennings and Tupanua in your centres this week, but still, my respect for the Roosters is what's going to keep me off this game. I'll get your thoughts in a moment, Clarkey, but Nicole is going to join us to share a try scorer tip, and it's on this one too.
Finally, we're back to 8 NRL games this weekend. I've got an early anytime try scorer tip. Obviously, not all the bookies are up, but James Tedesco is paying $2.40 on Bet365. They're up against the Dragons. Look, the Roosters are red hot at the moment, and so is Teddy. He's almost definitely going to be left out again of that Origin 3 spot, but if Dylan Edwards does go down, he wants to make sure he's the next one in line. So love Teddy at $2.40, anytime try scorer. As always, guys, Wednesday evening, our podcast and our article go out. Google Wiki Linktree, all the try scorer tips, and the odds comparison tool will be up. Good luck, punt responsibly. Cannot wait for Origin Game 3 already.
Great stuff from Nicole there. And I have a friend who bets through Bet365, and we always, whenever we're watching the footy, the compare odds. Seems like Bet365 do offer the best odds for anytime try scorers. Would you agree with that?
In certain positions, they have some outlying odds for sure. Definitely seem to get some juicy odds. I'll be completely honest with you. I negotiate some of these same game multis, and if I'm getting us, same game with better, one of the things I'm often doing is saying to their traders, hey, look at the price over here on 365. We've got to be able to beat that, or else people won't back this, same game. So Definitely, that's the ability of the punter to shop around. It's definitely in our favour. Like try scorer tips are hard because there's a big margin there to the bookies, but the variance gives you that opportunity too. And Nicole does pretty well with that, with finding good try scorer values for sure. Now,
100%.
tell us whether you think the Roosters are going to win another game 13 plus.
Yeah, when I look at this game, I did look at the Dragons initially, I'll be honest, and that revenge factor was something I considered off the back of your advice. And, they were embarrassed on Anzac Day, but there's another occasion in this game that's bigger than the embarrassment they featured on Anzac Day. And that is the fact it is Jared Waerea-Hargreaves' 307th NRL game as a Sydney Rooster. Random number, I know, but it now makes him the most capped player of all time for the Sydney Roosters. And we're talking about a club with 116 years of history here. I think this will be a massive occasion for the club at home here at Allianz Stadium. I think there will be old boys there that have played with him before. I expect a close to sold out crowd on a Sunday afternoon. And we know that the Roosters do milestones really well. You only need to look at James Tedesco last round where it was his 150th as a Rooster and they put in a huge shift for him and won by 34. The only concern I have for this Roosters side is their outside back depth being a little bit thin. I don't love Tupanua and Michael Jennings as my centres, but we did see Connor Watson shift there last round. He looked really dangerous, so that is a live option for them as well there. Look, regardless of all things here, I can see the Dragons competing, but that's it. I can't see them winning this game at all. The Roosters have still won 10 of their last 12 over the Dragons. It's a historic day for the club. I am factoring that in as a big reason for my tip here. I think the Dragons are a chance to turn up. We know they've been inconsistent throughout this year. They're finally in the top 8, so that should be motivation for them to at least fight for their spot in the 8. But the Roosters are a classier side than the Dragons, and even if the Dragons come with close to their best, I look at this Roosters side and I think I'd tip them against the Storm right now, in all honesty. I think if the Storm were the opposite here, I'd still tip the Roosters. I don't think I'd be taking anyone over them with their current form. So Roosters head-to-head, Winnie. I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, and that will bring up Clarkey's Collect as well. If you could bring that comment on screen, please. We know that Clarkey's Collect, guys, I get one play every week, and I try to make you guys a little bit of money here. Now, that is up 10 units so far this year, so I have gone really conservative this week, if I'm honest. I want to keep building it up before I take some of those riskier plays. So I've gone Panthers plus 4.5. I don't think they lose to the Broncos, but if they do, it would be like, Reece Walsh magic got them just home over the line. They lose by a field goal or 2 points. I believe they'll win outright, but I'm going to give myself a little buffer there. Storm, minus 5.5. You guys know I'm already on Storm to win 13 plus. I just think you can't tell me that although it's at Leichhardt, the number one team isn't going to beat the last ranked team by at least 6 points. The Storm are classy enough to do that, if not win by even more. And Roosters head-to-head for all the reasons I just offered you there. Last round, the reason why I was so confident on Roosters was the milestones. That was a big thing I factored in. I'm factoring it in against this week. All up, that 3-leg multi pays $2.31, which is a little bit low for a 3-legger. But as I said, I have gone super conservative with that, and I do hope that most legs breeze home pretty easy for us, Winnie. So that's Clarkey's Collect for round 18.
All I say is beware the Broncos Friday night. If you get through that game, I think you'll be feeling pretty confident.
Hopefully, Panthers win at full time, and Broncos are winning at halftime, so we get both sides there.
Plenty
of
of wiggle room with my plus 2.5 first half and your plus 4.5. Plenty big eye of that needle to thread.
100%. All righty, mate. We've ticked over the hour mark, so let's jump into the final game of the round. Sunday, we're at GO Stadium. It's 4:05 p.m. where the Raiders host the Knights. Now, this game was a pick'em. That line has now moved in the Knights, against the Knights, rather, minus 3.5. They welcome back Kalen Ponga, Leo Thompson, and Dylan Lucas. So 3 big returns there. For the Raiders, we've got Kyo Weeks at fullback and Adam Cook at halfback. Final game of the round. I will actually be at this game for a friend's birthday, Winnie. Who do you want me to cheer on and why?
Yeah, so cheer on the best bet of Knights minus 3.5. And let's start there. The game was pick'em going into today. They had said Ponga would return for round 20, and now he's in and it moves 3.5 points. But hang on, Ponga's worth more than 3.5 points, isn't he? You can make the same argument I did about Turbo. Like first week, there's a bit of doubt. There's some cobwebs there. But to me, it's not just how good he is and the upgrade of that position, but it's how much better he can make the players around him. And I look at the form that someone like Bradman Best is in right now is absolutely crazy. And what is going to happen when Ponga loops around the left side of the attack and has Bradman Best outside him? Like, good luck trying to stop that. So if I was to pick a try scorer this week, Best, you're telling me that Ponga's not going to put him away, put him through for one. I would be very concerned if I was the Raiders about stopping that, but they're not the only weapons that the Raiders are going to have to contend. I really had this feel that Saturday night win was an energizing win for the Knights, and I think you get so much out of winning these tough games against a quality opponent like the Eels still are. Yes, they may have been bottom, but a quality opponent, and you won without your best player, and now he's back. Crossland is out, but it's a great opportunity for Jaden Brayley, who was the captain of this team a year ago, to come in and to play full-time at hooker. And the Leo Thompson one is a big one too, where I do think there's an edge to the Knights in the forward pack here with both Saifidi brothers. Pierce Paul been awesome this year, and Leo Thompson coming back in I think is one of the better, up and coming props in the comp. And that can really take away what would be Canberra's strength and play style. Ethan Strange is a real serious prospect, but the Knights bring in Price in the halves, which is offering something similar in terms of energy and just youthful exuberance. So I've got a Raiders team that fought pretty hard last week and got close against the Storm. But the fact is that Canberra's just not a top 8 team. The Knights absolutely believe that they are. They know the importance of winning a game like this. And my final factor, a word that we've mentioned a few times tonight, and it's best served cold, that is revenge. And it was round 1 at McDonald Jones Stadium where the Raiders came in and upset Newcastle. And I do think that the Knights will return the favour on Sunday, Arvo.
I love all your thoughts there. I was already on the Knights myself at -3.5 with 1 unit. I've just upped that to 3. I feel really confident on this one as well, man. You look at both these sides, right? They've both won 7 games so far this season. Both sides are a realistic chance, I would say, to back up their 2023 campaign and play finals again this year. If we go to that finals game last year, actually, we all thought the Knights were the stronger team, but the Raiders really pushed them to the end, and that was a tight game. I think Knights won by 2 in the end. Then they meet earlier this year. The Raiders roster weakens, losing Jack White and others, and the Knights were favoured again at home, naturally. But the Raiders upset them by 16 points earlier this year in Newcastle, nonetheless. So I went back to that game and had a closer look at some of the stats. Now, Jamal Fogarty on that day or night kicked 799 metres, Winnie. For context, only 7 players in the history of NRL have kicked 800 or more. Only 7. And we're talking Clearys, Jamie Sowards, Mitchell Moses's, real elite halfbacks. So the game management that Jamal Fogarty had by his boot in that game was next level. And it was kind of the game where we realized, wow, Fogarty has stepped up without White, and the Raiders are looking good this year. But they're lacking that with their current halves duo. Ethan Strange isn't really noted for his general kick play. He's more of like that centre 5/8 build that's going to give you a stronger running game. And Adam Cook's primarily a fullback this year and has played a lot of fullback in New South Wales Cup. So there is no doubt in my mind their game management via the boot drops tenfold in this game without Jamal Fogarty. I think that brings these sides immediately so much closer together, even if we're only going off that last result. And I did think last week with Will Price coming into the spine, it could take the Knights a little while to find their groove with another halves pairing. Not the case. They had points, and they had points when it mattered, when the game was on the line. So I am impressed by that there. Therefore, I've got Knights here. I believe they get the job done. I think they get their revenge. You look at the Raiders, they've conceded an average of 39 points in their last 3 games at home. So they have lost that fortress appeal. It's also Tyson Frizzell's 250th NRL game. So there is a lot of motivation there, I would say, with the Knights for their club, mate. I've got Knights at the line, mate. And yeah, it would be I don't want to jinx it, mate, because last week I kind of gave 2 Clarkey's Collect saying the Raiders plus 15. But if I didn't have my one, this would be what I'd go with for Clarkey's Collect this week. So take with that what you will, guys. Alrighty, Winnie, hour 10-minute, mate. For those that have joined us late, please recap your best bets one more time for us.
Yeah, I would say I'll try and do a better job in future of keeping it more succinct because I do want to be under the hour. I value everyone's time. And the best bets, South Sydney minus $1.50 better. Sharks minus $7.50 $91.365. Brisbane plus 2.5. First half $1.88. Ladbrokes and Neds. Cowboys minus $1.50 better. I think everywhere. Knights minus $3.50 sports bet. Mixed matchup will be out tomorrow. And even though we're over on time, I'm giving you a bonus tip. Take it or leave it, or let me know what you think about this. But I've been following the Euros really closely. I am going to tip England wins the Euros at 475 on Sportsbet. Here's why I would jump on right now. These are higher odds at 475 that of England winning the tournament than they were pre-tournament, where they were the favourites around 450. And all that's happened since the tournament started is England's gotten all the way to the quarterfinals. They have the easiest quarterfinal and the easiest half of the draw, with every other big challenger on the other side of the draw. And yet we get longer odds on England because they've been so underwhelming. But there's still time. We know, just like in rugby league, teams can change week by week. Teams can build into a tournament. England just survived a game where they had a miracle comeback. Sometimes those miracle wins are your turning point. I've backed England myself, so let me know if you like it or if you disagree. Clarkey, any other tips you want to wrap up for everybody?
Wayne Rooney, top tournament try scorer in the Euros, I think you called it, for England. He might be retired. Clarkey's collect, guys, is Panthers plus 4.5, Storm minus 5.5, and Roosters head-to-head. That is paying $2.31 on Top Sport. And if I could have another one, it would be Knights at the line this week, guys. I won't be here for the recap show again, guys. I'm going part-time. No, I'm only joking. It just worked out that way. It's my friend's birthday at Geo Stadium, so I've already bought him tickets for his birthday present. But I will trust the man above me to deliver another great recap show within 15 minutes of full time of this game. Have a great week ahead, everyone, and only Winnie for the final word.
And just to be clear, if people are listening to this as a podcast, my video is above Clarkey. So when Clarkey keeps saying, he thanks the man above, or he's looking to the man above for the tips, he's not religious. He's looking to me, and hopefully I can repay that faith. We're on a little winning streak. Certainly nothing to write home about yet, but 5 on the line, best bets on the line. So let us know what you reckon about them, as always, or if there's anything else you like. Enjoy the rest of your week and the week of footy ahead. Thanks as always for tuning in, and leg